Welcome to the native prairie. This diverse ecosystem of slender grasses, flowering plants, and abundant wildlife once covered over 1.4 million square miles across North America. Millions of years in the making, only a fraction of this original prairie exists today in a patchwork of parks, preserves, and private land. So what happened? And how do we restore this once thriving but now endangered ecosystem?
The North American prairie is an unforgiving environment. Gale force winds, extreme drought, destructive hail, uncontrolled wildfires, and herds of grazing wildlife all forced native grasses to adapt. The evolutionary winners have tall, slender stalks that bend in the wind, deep roots that seek out scarce water, and a protected growing stem found beneath the soil surface that can survive both wildfire and wildlife. For the first human inhabitants of the North American prairie, its natural riches supported a hunting and agricultural lifestyle uniquely adapted to the environment. But as outside settlers moved onto the prairie, their heavy hand would change the landscape forever. They hunted the vast herds of bison almost to extinction, suppressed wildfires at the first sign of trouble. With iron plows and barbed wire, a sea of grass was transformed into a patchwork of farms and ranches. Exotic grasses introduced from outside North America crowded out the remaining native grasses, transforming the entire prairie landscape. Today, natural resource professionals work to convert non-native grassland and former cropland back into native prairie. They employ a multi-step process to remove invasive grasses and restore native species. They include herbicide application to eliminate invasive plants, prescribed fires to burn up invasive grasses and fertilize the soil, seeding into now bare soil, or interseeding, which involves seeding directly into a field of exotic grasses. These seeds germinate into a field of native grasses and flowering plants, but the job is not complete as invasive species living on the margins threaten to invade the native prairie once again.
In the natural prairie ecosystem, it was manipulated by grazing and fire, and you take one of those out and certain species tend to dominate. So you take the grazing aspect away, certain species will take over. You take the fire aspect away, certain species take over. In a true prairie ecosystem, you need them both to survive.
Right now I'm standing in a field of smooth brome. This is an example of an invasive grass that was brought in by the early settlers and was planted as ground cover and on a lot of roadsides because of its ability to quickly cover an area. And as you can see next to me, this whole field has been covered in smooth brome and is what we call a monoculture. It's one simple species of grass that has come to dominate the prairie.
Through innovative techniques that mimic the impacts of wildfire and wildlife, natural resource managers can maintain a healthy, productive native prairie. Prescribed fires in the early spring stunt the growth of many invasive cool season grasses that sprout weeks before many warm season native grasses. These fires also release valuable nutrients back into the soil to fertilize the native grasses.
The first step in prairie restoration involves clearing the field and preparing a seed bed for your native seed. That involves usually spraying herbicide to kill off the plants, and then afterwards a prescribed burn to burn off the plants, and not only that, but also fertilize the soil with the ash from the plants. And it's not just federal agencies such as the National Park Service that are engaging in native prairie restoration. Many nonprofits and private landowners are actually engaging in this process because of its numerous commercial applications. Native prairie makes great pasture for cattle and for other wildlife. It is great for water quality. The deep roots of native plants actually hold the soil into the ground. And as a result, it is very useful for preventing erosion. And not only that, but native prairie plants do not require many of the pesticides and herbicides that would be used in other farm fields and pastures. And that also adds to the greater water quality of the prairie ecosystem.
Many restoration efforts include the selective reintroduction of wildlife such as bison or cattle to graze in restored prairie. Here, at the Knife River Indian villages, we mimic the disturbances of grazing wildlife through haying or mowing. Selective herbicide application eliminates any pockets of remaining invasive species. Additional seeding may be required to help restore several native cool season grasses or flowering plants lost through other methods. Successful native prairie restoration creates a diverse and dynamic ecosystem that is beneficial to both people and the wider ecosystem. This diverse mix of grasses and wildflowers provide essential food and shelter for wildlife and pollinating insects. Native prairie is a visually stunning backdrop for birdwatching and other naturalist activities. It has direct economic impacts as pasture for cattle and habitat for game birds. Native prairie prevents soil erosion and eliminates the use of pesticides and fertilizers, improving water quality. Here at Knife River Indian Village's National Historic Site, native prairie restoration recreates the historical environment that supported Plains Indian village life for centuries. But most importantly, native prairie restoration helps preserve an endangered ecosystem. Without this active intervention and natural resource management, the few remaining examples of native prairie might disappear forever. Through these restoration efforts, native prairie is once again returning to North America, ready to teach a new generation about the amazing diversity of America's grasslands.